This is the Creative Funding Show, a podcast for authors, YouTubers, and podcasters who want to fund the work they love without selling out.
Welcome back to the Creative Funding Show. I am Thomas Umstadt Jr., and with me is Bremner Morris, the head of Patreon's Creator Partnership and Success Teams, and he also has a street name named after him here in Austin, Texas.
Right off of Slaughter Road.
Right off of Slaughter Lane, which is not named after historic slaughter in Austin, by the way. It's named after a guy. Anyway, Bremner, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So in this episode, I want to talk about newbie mistakes that people make on Patreon, because you do a lot of consulting with patrons, in fact, or with creators. In fact, this was your primary job for several months, is just helping people take their pages to the next level, because there's just having a page on Patreon is not enough. So I guess the first question is, how does a creator know when they're ready to start a Patreon page? When do they know that their fan base is big enough to justify it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it does depend on every specific creator. There are some creators who only have a few thousand fans who are doing really well on Patreon because they have a very deep and unique relationship with those patrons. And then there are some folks who have millions of fans who may not have as deep of a relationship, and so there's a different outcome there. But from our perspective, it's really about when you have developed that deep relationship with your fans where they would want to engage with you in an ongoing, recurring basis. And also understanding if you were to convert, call it 0.5% to 10% of those fans, would that be a compelling value proposition and enough of a return on your investment? One of the things that we work with creators on is essentially financially modeling out what their potential earnings could look like. And what we typically tell creators is that you have your total addressable audience, which are the number of folks that you engage with out in the wild. Maybe they see your show once, or they've come back a couple times, but really they're not yet a fan. They're somebody who knows who you are. And then they move into becoming a fan. And that's probably a much smaller portion of your fan base or of your total addressable audience. And out of that fan base, then there's a not very small, but a smaller component that are your potential members or your potential patrons. And typically we see that out of your fan base or your subscriber base, that's anywhere between 0.5% to upwards of 10% that would be willing to convert into a fan.
Do you have some sort of online tool where people can just punch in their numbers and get those numbers? Because I could see that being very popular to just get an idea of what's the possibilities here.
Not yet, but that's actually one of our opportunity assessments for one of our product teams to actually build that out, so that when folks come in and think about launching a Patreon page, they understand what the potential return could be. Because one of the important things to note is that offering a membership business is an investment. There's an investment from a marketing standpoint in educating your fans on why you're launching a membership business, and then marketing it on an ongoing basis. And then also, obviously, you have a recurring sort of contract or subscription with your fans. So as a result, you are sort of beholden to fulfilling benefits or rewards on a regular cadence, which is an investment in and of itself.
That's right. And one mistake you can make is you have 5 backers and suddenly have to do all this work to keep those 5 backers happy. I heard a cool trick on an earlier episode of doing on a per thing instead of a per month basis, and say, I'm not going to charge anybody until I have at least 50 backers or something to help protect you from that.
Yeah. That was our earliest business model. So when Jack first launched the business, it was all about subscribing on a per thing basis. So anytime he released a video, his fans would, they said, hey, I'm going to pledge X amount of dollars per video at a cap of, call it 10 times X or whatever it was. But essentially they said, I'm going to pay per video. But what we realized is that a lot of creators were essentially turning it into an ongoing subscription service. So it made sense for us to offer that as a capability of the platform. And now the majority of creators on our platform use that ongoing subscription and membership relationship. It's more predictable. It's also easier for patrons to understand, and it's more predictable from their standpoint because they know exactly how much they have to pay on a monthly basis. But also it aligns with the way the industry is moving, as we mentioned on the last time I was on the episode.
Yeah, it's very scary. It's like, I'll do it per YouTube video, and then suddenly they're like, I'm going to post 10 YouTube videos, and I realize you can put the cap, but I get the impression that not a lot of people put in a cap. Of how many, with the max per month.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any data, or at least I don't have any data that shows how many people have a cap. But most of these folks are your most loyal fans. So as a result, they are pretty much in for however much you create. So they want to be there to support your craft. So I don't know, but I would assume that there's a lot of folks who don't have a cap.
Yeah. So somebody is looking at their fan base and they're like, I think I have enough fans. I either have a small Spartan, 300 Spartans who are going to stand by me, no matter what, or I have 1,000 Athenians or 10,000 Athenians. No offense to Athens. Y'all had a great navy 2,000 years ago.
I hear we have a lot of people listening from Athens.
I'm learning. I have to be careful with Europeans. I don't want to unnecessarily offend them. But so somebody's decided, okay, I pull the trigger. I feel like I've got an audience that can justify it. Because I will say, probably the number one newbie mistake is thinking, oh, I have a big enough audience. I can just launch on Patreon and it's going to be successful. And the reality is the audience has to come first. Right. So somebody who does have an audience, what are some common mistakes they make launching their Patreon page?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, launching a Patreon page is not enough. You're essentially launching a membership business, and a lot of the requirements associated with a membership business are ongoing marketing and education of your fan base, ongoing engagement with that fan base, and then also the articulation of what that membership business means for your fans. So there are a lot of folks who launch their Patreon page and then they're like, where is everybody? Because they're not doing the work to acquire the audience and then convert that audience into a paying member. So the number one mistake is not building out a compelling marketing plan associated with the launch of your membership service.
And the easiest marketing plan is just create a Google Doc or a Word doc, put the next 14 days in it, and put some bullet point of what you're going to do during that day to market your campaign. And that's a really simple plan, but that will make a huge difference.
Yeah, we build out these when we're consulting with creators, these massive work back schedules, talking about on what days are you going to talk about what component of your membership campaign. And a lot of it's about building the momentum associated with the launch. You want your fans to be paying attention when you do actually launch your membership service. So we've seen a lot of folks tease that something really exciting is coming up. We've seen a lot of folks sort of pull their audience and understand what are the things that they would want as a part of a membership service. And that sort of gets them a little bit excited, but building momentum up to that initial launch and then having some type of compelling event associated with that launch. Most people, most fans, I know myself included, would probably delay a financial decision for a long time because it's like, wait, I'm going to spend $10 this month. You know what? I'll think about that in 3 months. If there's some type of compelling event or limited benefit that I get for signing up on that date, or something that says you have to do it today versus 3 months from now, that makes a big difference as well. And then once people are engaged, making sure that you have a forum for that engagement to sort of flow. So on the first day of membership, making sure that you're available, that you're there for questions, that you're also there for the folks that sign up so that they feel the really unique and special vibe of becoming a member. These folks are really looking for that deeper and potentially emotional connection with you as the creator. And it's exciting on your launch day if you can be there for them.
That's right. And live events, online live events, I find a really good way to do that. So when we launched the Novel Marketing Patreon campaign, our Facebook Live that we hyped really big leading up to it was a huge driver in our initial patrons signing up. And in-person a live event could be even better, but that's suddenly real super expensive and complicated and difficult to pull off. So it's important. So you're saying it's important to kind of put that plan together to tease it so it doesn't come out of nowhere, and then have a big kind of limited event.
Yeah.
And in a sense, there's nothing particularly novel about this, right? Like PBS doesn't get their pledges from viewers like you at the beginning of the episodes. This show is brought to you by viewers like you, is to remind you why you're a member. They get their pledges from their big pledge drive once a year. So they have, the people sitting at the I don't know if you ever watched a PBS pledge drive, but when I was a kid, I was, mesmerized. And that was when they played Lord of the Dance or River Dance or whatever, which was my mom
I've seen those
really
for sure.
into. Yeah, so they'd always play that only during the pledge drive.
Yeah,
and lots of ice skating, I remember. So kind of what you're recommending is to have to kick things off with something like that, and then maybe you revisit it a year, in the future of some other limited time event. And it doesn't have to be contrived; it could be attached to something very real. So like, names in an album.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a classic example.
Yeah. So Natalie Dawn, who's our CEO Jack's wife, she did a campaign associated with getting all of her patrons' names in an album. They had to sign up on a certain, a period of time, and then they were going to get featured in the album cover. And that was a huge driver of her success and her initial sign up. And then once you have all these people sign up, you actually then have to convert them into an ongoing recurring relationship. So there are tactics associated with quote unquote acquisition. And then there are tactics with ongoing retention. One of the things that you just mentioned with the PBS example of mentioning and viewers like you is driving fan recognition and calling attention to the fact that you have a membership program is a really effective way of quote unquote marketing your membership campaign, while not necessarily saying explicitly, hey, support me on Patreon. You're sort of giving recognition to the fans that have contributed to you and to your craft. But then also two, to the folks that haven't, sort of highlighting that, and viewers like you, and you also get X, Y, and Z in return for becoming a member. So there are very creative ways that you can drive acquisition efforts on an ongoing basis through your, broadcasts, if you will.
That's right. And the best ones, and this is always frustrating advice, but the best ones are tied uniquely to what you're creating.
Right.
So there's not one silver bullet. A lot of people are like, oh, what's the easy, like the one thing to do? And it's like the one silver bullet is put people's names on stuff. But other than that, it really depends on what you're creating. Like, because what works for a musician may be very different from what works for a podcaster. Now, the fact that they have a microphone in front of them doesn't suddenly make the way that they acquire new members or new backers the same way. So let's talk a little bit about those rewards. So Natalie Dawn, right? She had a lot of people who wanted to be immortalized for all time in her compact disc jewel case, which I feel like alone kind of puts it in a point of time. Right. I'd be very curious if we're still using those in 10 years. Now if she'd have invited them, put them on the record, we'll be listening to those 1,000 years from now.
That's right.
But what kind of rewards work well, and what mistakes do patrons make with creating those rewards?
So we break it out into about 5 categories. So I just mentioned fan recognition. That's a huge driver of both acquisition and retention. And if you mention that as a component of your rewards, it's sort of this additive, stamp and like badge that patron carries with them in the physical world potentially, but also in the digital world.
Get a little sticker.
Yeah, you get a sticker online as well. And that's something that we're investing in to be able to have that recognition live with you across the internet. And there's some other really cool examples of fan recognition. I was at a live podcast event here in Austin during South by Southwest, and one of the podcast shows brought all their patrons onto stage and allowed them to participate in this live podcast. And they probably had 15 to 20 folks up on stage. But imagine if you're this loyal fan, you've been contributing or subscribing at $10 a month, and then you get to get up on stage with your favorite podcast. It's huge.
It's huge. And everyone in the audience is now like, how do I become a patron?
Yeah, exactly. So not only is it a retention mechanism, as you mentioned, it's also an acquisition mechanism. So fan recognition is one. Number 2 is engagement. So the ability to engage with the creator themselves. That could be through live streams. It could be through an Ask Me Anything. It could be through a polling feature. But essentially, the ability to engage with that creator on an ongoing basis really does drive up a ton of conversion, especially for your most loyal fans. It'd be like you get to jam with the Black Keys if you're a huge Black Keys fan, as an example. But engagement is the second, a really second compelling benefit bucket that we've seen.
And the easiest way to do that is to just send a message thanking patrons for becoming a patron. This is the easiest thing. I heard this from Tom at Graphtreon. He's like, he sends a message to every single person who signs up to become a patron. And that's a really great way of starting that conversation, because that thread is now created. They get that little notification, and it makes you a real person to a certain degree.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing. And we mentioned this in the last episode. The patrons are supporting you as the creator. They may be there for the benefits and they really love the content, 100%, but they're also supporting you in totality. And so there's a bunch of stuff that you may be doing that you don't necessarily know would be a compelling benefit. But for your most loyal fans, they may love to see, the unfinished manuscript of a piece of your music, or sort of the things that didn't make the cut when you were writing the book that you were writing. So there's a ton of stuff that is just sort of like the periphery of what you are creating that is really compelling to your most loyal fans. The third is digital offers. So that's on our exclusive digital rewards. That could be an exclusive video, that could be behind the scenes content, that could be a badge, as we mentioned. But there's a bunch of different ways that you can digitally fulfill rewards, and that's an area where we're investing significantly around both products that Patreon's building, like Lens, which I mentioned on our previous episode, which is essentially ethereal video that you can offer to your fan base, but also in all the integrations that we have with engagement platforms. Those engagement platforms really are, digital offers that you can then offer back out to your fan base.
And the platform is really great for podcasters because it handles all of the technology of delivering that bonus episode. In fact, there's some podcasts that I follow that I really love. And I have, in at least one case, I gave $20 to their fundraising episode for a bunch of bonus episodes that I have never listened to because they come in a zip file that then I would have to export and then sync to my computer and then put it on my phone, and it's just so much hassle. Yeah. And the hassle of creating a custom RSS feed per person is really high. Most podcasters nowadays don't even know what an RSS feed is. That's all handled by their podcast host. And I'm very thankful that because easily that would be a feature that's on our roadmap. At some point we'll accommodate podcasters. No, that's already there, which is one of the primary ways that I deliver digital goods on our other show. There's a special Q&A episode, and we also have a bundle episode where, since we have such a big backlog, we'll take all of the episodes on a certain topic. So, we'll talk about Facebook marketing. In the last 5 years, we've had 4 or 5 episodes on Facebook marketing. So we put them together, and now it's like an hour and a half episode with a different guest just on Facebook. And that was a really easy for us to put together, but really high value and very easy to deliver.
Yeah. So completely. I think that's the other thing to note is that there are folks that want sort of either that back catalog or the uncut episode or the bonus content that may have been cut that didn't make the final version. All of that is super valuable to your most loyal fans. And the nice thing in the podcasting space is that we have a really easy mechanism to fulfill those through our private RSS feed. And that's one of the things that, as we're maturing as a business, we're starting to focus on specific categories, and then what are the specific features that we need to build against those categories to help them better fulfill digital rewards. So if it's in the video space, maybe we build a partnership with a video hosting provider. If it's in the podcasting space, obviously it's those partnerships that we may have with the players that a patron can use. And there's a variety of other areas where we may invest across category to make it a more compelling platform opportunity for our creators. The fourth is around access and insight. So the insight into your creative process and understanding of how you create, what you're creating, and then also the ability to participate. So that could be that they get to participate in a show. That could be that they get to be polled on what you're going to feature next on your show. But access and insight into your creative process. Again, this is like your Gold Club member, right? And they expect to be able to participate in that way. But it's also a really great way of keeping them engaged and offering them that benefit of becoming a member. And then the final one is physical offers. So merchandise.
That scary thing, shipping boxes and boxes to all your thousands of fans.
Exactly. And we've had a bunch of folks offer merchandise as a compelling benefit on our platform. And we've recognized that investment is just brutal. And so as a result, we're building products that will make that really easy, where it's just an automated function through Patreon that if somebody signs up at a tier that offers merchandise, there's going to be the ability to fulfill that through partners that we have in the background that are then doing all that shipping, all the boxing, all the inventory management, and also doing that on the time scale that you set up within our system. So maybe it says after 6 months, they get X, and after 12 months, they get Y. We want to make that really easy because we've seen that that's a super valuable benefit for fans.
And working with partners is really key. I have a friend who runs a fulfillment center, and oftentimes when somebody signs up with her fulfillment center, the fee that they charge is less than the discount that they get from UPS because they ship so much stuff with UPS. And so it ends up not costing our clients hardly anything to have them do the fulfillment because UPS really doesn't want to deal with you coming to Office Depot with a box. Like for them, that's really expensive, right? The number of people who have to touch that. And so they give really big discounts to really organized operations. And so there's a lot of potential.
Well, there's the discounts, but also this relates to probably where we're taking the conversation. But one of the ways when we're thinking about rewards or benefits is that there's a investment associated with it. There's a certain amount of cost to a creator in fulfilling those rewards. And one of the things that creators never take into account is the cost of their time. And so especially in the merchandise space, that time, they sort of give that away for free and it is super costly. So the amount of time that we can reduce by offering those automated features and relationships with back-end fulfillment mechanisms, that is a huge benefit to our creator base. And we really, when we're thinking about any type of reward or benefit that a creator would offer, we want to make sure that they're thinking about it on sort of this equation. What's the impact with your fan base? How impactful is that going to be in converting them and then retaining them on an ongoing basis? And that's going to be unique to every single fan base. For one fan base, maybe an extra episode is what's going to make them a loyal fan and a loyal subscriber for 2 years. For another fan base, it's that they want the merchandise at a year interval. For another fan base, it could be that they really want to show up to their live event and be brought on stage. So it's different per fan base, but just understanding what the impact is of those benefits can better help you, one, price them, but also two, figure out what your offers are that you would offer through your membership program. But that should really then be offset by the effort. So impact versus effort. And if the effort's super high, then either you should offer it, but offer it at a very high price point, or not offer it at all. And if the effort's super low, then that maybe means that you can offer it at a lower price point.
A good thing to do is to decide what your time is worth. Yeah. Be like, I'm not doing anything that's not bringing back at least $25 an hour or $50 an hour. It almost doesn't even matter what the price is. Yeah. It's just that you have some sort of number to that, so you're able to use it to make decisions. Right. Because I know a lot of authors, when they calculate some of the activities that they do, like say social media marketing for their books, they're making 25 cents an hour. Yeah. It's like, when you can make more money on the side of the road with a cardboard sign, you need to change what you're doing. It's like, this is not working. Yeah. So make that pivot. Now, so we talked about rewards. I want to talk briefly about videos. Yeah. Now, in the there's a huge gamut of video quality. So YouTubers pretty much exclusively have amazing videos. They knock them out of the park. They're on one end of the spectrum. And then you have authors on the other end of the spectrum, often who don't have a video at all, right? They're like, I'm so scared of having a video. I don't want to have a video. And then you have podcasters that are kind of in the middle, right? They're cool with the audio, right? Like my videos, the audio is great. Video part, not so great. Yeah. So what are some best practices when it comes to creating a compelling, hey, welcome to my Patreon page video?
Yeah. So I'll take a quick step back and talk about the need to educate your fan base. So most of your fans are used to engaging with you in a free manner. They maybe consume your podcast for free. They may consume your video for free on YouTube. If you're an author, they're used to paying $10 for your book, $20 for your book, but then pretty much beyond that, they're consuming most of your content for free. And in reality, a lot of that content is paid for by ad dollars or by, your book deal or something like that. But at the end of the day, most of your fans are not used to engaging with you in this paid manner. And so as a result, there's a ton of education that needs to go into converting that fan to understand why they need to subscribe at a paid rate for your content. One is establishing that what you create is valuable. And that is something that I think is more of an internal conversation that a lot of creators have to have. And I've heard that from many folks that I've talked to, that they don't necessarily view their content as valuable. And I think that that's sort of what this industry has, pushed forward, is that things are free. It's very ethereal, right? So first is value your content. And then second, talk to your fans about, one, either why the industry doesn't value your content today and how that's impacting you as a creator and impacting your ability to be independent. And then 2, also educating them about what they get in return for becoming this loyal supporter / member. And so that's like at a super high level. You need to educate your fan base, and you need to talk to them about the value that you're creating and the value for value exchange that you're entering into as part of your membership base. How you do that can be in a video, it can be in a blog post, it could be on a podcast, it could be wherever you're comfortable. But it's really important that you have that educational arc of, hey, I'm offering a membership program, and here's why. It's what I create is valuable, and I need either your support, or I want to engage in a membership relationship with you so I can continue to create on an ongoing basis. Here's the benefit that I get back as a creator, and here's the benefit that you get as a fan. That's sort of the script, if you will. But then
mentioning Patreon's not enough, because a lot of people are like, everyone knows what a Patreon campaign is and how it works. And I was at an event yesterday, and somebody came in who was not from the event, and they're like, "What's Patreon?" Yeah. And if you're in the YouTube world, you're like, how do you not know it? Like every other video ends with, please support us on Patreon. But the reality is that a good portion of the population, especially the older half, I would say, the not YouTube, channel subscribing half of the population, may not understand what Patreon is, or maybe they hear the word at the end of videos, but they don't know what it means.
Yeah. I mean, right now, and this is something we're investing in as a business, is building out more of a brand equity with what Patreon means. But really, if Patreon faded into the background, and if our brand wasn't front and foremost in the relationship between the creator and their fans, that's okay to us. So as a result, what we've educated a lot of our creators on is that their messaging should be more about membership and less about Patreon. Patreon, people, sometimes their eyes glaze over. It's like, what the heck is a Patreon? Or more importantly, sometimes they've heard it 50 times because they've watched 50 YouTubers who have a Patreon, and it doesn't carry the same resonance as, hey, I'm launching a membership service, or I'm launching a paid for fan club, or I'm launching X, Y, and Z that directly describes what you're offering. It's not describing this platform, right? Like Patreon is a platform, and we are a platform that powers membership businesses. It's not like people who are launching a online e-commerce store say, hey, I'm launching a Shopify, right? So our advice is to anchor it back to something that your fan base knows, membership, fan club, those types of things, and then describe what that means to the fan specifically. So we've seen a lot of folks say, support me on Patreon and nothing else. And that's really ineffective at educating your fan base. Saying, I'm launching a membership business, and that includes X, Y, and Z in terms of benefits back to you. And it's really exciting for me because it allows me to create independently into perpetuity. It gives me an ongoing sustainable stream of income. It allows me to engage more deeply with my fan base. And
sometimes you can even brand it separately. So like Philip DeFranco doesn't say back me on Patreon. He says, join DeFranco Elite.
Totally.
Right? Which is a great way of doing it because it makes me curious. It gives me a hint that this is for the super fans. Yeah. And it leads me to learn more. And there's nothing keeping you from doing that with whatever it is you're creating. You can even steal the word elite. DeFranco doesn't own that. Although he can come on the show if he wants and tell me not to encourage it. So you need to educate. And that's probably the number one thing with the video is you're educating kind of from a high level, why the Patreon exists and why you have a reward. It's not necessarily going through each individual reward because that often gets you into trouble, I feel, because as soon as you make a change to your rewards, which likely is going to happen pretty early, and people often make mistakes with their rewards when first getting started, and people are wanting different things, they're backers, and they make tweaks, and suddenly now you have to recut the whole video because you walk through each reward with step by step.
It's more about at a high level what this membership business offers you, and one of the other things, talking about DeFranco Elite, but just in general, talking about your membership program with confidence and with excitement and with this sort of vigor. You want your fans to be excited about this launch. And we have seen some folks early on in Patreon's existence that were sort of apologetic about launching a membership program or apologetic about, quote unquote, asking their fans for money. You're not asking your fans for money. You are entering into a value for value exchange that is really exciting for your fan base because they get to engage with you in a more exclusive and deep manner than they could just sort of out there on the internet. And so you want to sort of capture that excitement and pitch your membership program with confidence. we haven't done like a sentiment analysis of effectiveness of videos against the membership dollars that they drive, but just intuitively, I would say that most people who talk about their membership business with vigor, excitement, confidence, that describe the benefits are more successful than somebody who sort of says, "I'm sorry that I'm asking you for money," or "Please support me on Patreon." Those are definitely some things that I would say are like anti-best practices.
And I've definitely seen it different channel to channel. So authors are perhaps the most apologetic. YouTubers, it's interesting. There's been a shift. They used to be more apologetic, and now it's like, help protect me from the evil YouTube who's been demonetizing me. Yeah. And that totally puts it into a different frame. In some ways, I feel like they are overblowing the demonetization threat that YouTube has been doing. And I have a lot to say about demonetization because a lot of it's been coming from traditional media, which sees the YouTube advertising dollars as a direct threat to their business model. So like mainstream media, whether it's biased or not in general, I feel like there's a very clear financial bias when they attack YouTube. And if you spend your advertising dollars on YouTube, here's this one obscure creator who's a Nazi, right? It's like, there's like 1 million people creating on YouTube. Like that's 0.0001%.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not going to get off on that is a conversation for another time. I'll get somebody who's angry and get on the show.
We can get angry, but I think that you make a good point that the vibe has changed, and there is a problem for a lot of folks who used to make a sustainable income on YouTube, that they are no longer doing that. And we have some creators who have millions and millions of subscribers on YouTube who are making near nothing in ad revenue. And again, back to our last episode, that's why Jack created the company. But at the end of the day, the predictability of this revenue and also the ability to offer something that is creatively independent to your fan base is really compelling to a creator. We recently launched a creator. I don't know if you're familiar with Cyanide and Happiness, but they're an online digital comic. They make digital shorts, and they, it's stick figures and they have butts. The stick figures have butts, and they got completely demonetized to the point where they were making almost a tenth of what they used to make because of a stick figure butt. And
YouTube.
Yeah. But they have 12 million subscribers, give or take, on YouTube, and they are not making enough to sustain the business. And so they recently launched and said, look, if we want to continue to make sort of quote unquote uncensored content, to have digital butts,
some big air quotes here for uncensored.
That we need to have this ongoing sustainable stream of income, and we want to be able to do that because our fan base really loves the hilarity with which we do our digital comics and our digital shorts, and that was really compelling to their fan base. But it's part of a broader arc that there are these sort of wide swath decisions that are made by the algorithm, quote unquote, that are then impacting folks that make content that doesn't really offend or isn't really on the, and as you mentioned, like the Nazi side of things. It's more, folks that just have something that maybe isn't appealing to the big advertisers, and as a result, they're now not making any money.
The algorithm's paying more attention to the 5 people who are offended than the 12 million people who happily subscribe. So back to mistakes that beginners make. So we talked about videos. We talked about, rewards. Let's talk a little bit about engaging with patrons. Yeah. What are some mistakes that beginning Patreon users, creators make when engaging with their patrons?
That's a really good question. I think that one of the mistakes, and I wouldn't call it a mistake, it's just sort of like an oversight that creators make, is that these folks are subscribing to you in order to either consume content and be a benefits oriented patron, or to support you. And that may mean that their engagement continues to live on YouTube or live on Twitch or wherever they engage with you today, via email. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to migrate over to Patreon. So one of the things, there are a lot of folks that, creators, when they establish their Patreon page, they're like, I'm not having a ton of engagement. And it's like, well, that's because they're using Patreon as a way to transact with you. And then they may go back to engaging with you where they engaged with you in the past. So, there's a misunderstanding that Patreon needs to become the hub of engagement for your fan base. It could, like 100%, but it doesn't always have to. So that's one, not mistake, but just misalignment, if you will.
So as long as you are doing a good job engaging with your fans, that's what matters. It doesn't matter that they're leaving their comment on patreon.com as opposed to leaving their comment on your blog or, leaving a comment on Facebook. What matters is the fact that you're engaging them somewhere.
Yeah. But knowing who those folks are, that's important, right? Like knowing that I'm your $10 patron when I comment on your Twitter, that's important because I sort of expect that exclusive level experience. It's like if I, am a top member of a sports club, when I call in, you expect to have somebody talk to you in a different manner than somebody who's not a member, if you will. And so, it's that differentiated experience for the folks that are contributing to your craft, but doing that across the internet. And, to that point, that's where our platform API comes in because it can talk to different services and let MailChimp know that this is your 10% of your overall audience base who are your specialized fans. So email them something different. Or, on a Twitch, as an example, or within Reddit, hey, these are your folks that are your fans. Engage with them in a differentiated manner.
Yeah, I got a long email from somebody who didn't like one of my podcast episodes on my other show. And it was this long, rambling email. It was a very unhappy person. And at the bottom, they were like, yeah, I'm not a patron, blah, blah, blah. And I remember as I was reading that, I was like, if they were a patron and they'd sent me this long email, I absolutely would have responded and like given them this like carefully considered, like, thank you for your feedback. And I read it, right? And it's, going around in my head. It's like, man, if this person's not a patron, do I really owe them a response to their long, angry? Because there's a lot of angry people on the internet. Totally. It's like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to convert you into a not angry person.
Some of our creators called Patreon a troll-free zone because you have to pay to troll on Patreon.
The one safe place on the internet.
Exactly. So, I don't know if that's 100% true, but it's likely true that a troll is not going to pay $10 a month in order to,
I will say that the interactions that we've gotten, our Q&A episode have been, because we ask people for questions, and they are the best, most positive interactions we have with our fans because these are people who are smart, they're asking good questions, and they're really wanting to get better. It's marketing. The other podcast is a marketing podcast, and so these are people who are taking it seriously, and that's like our most fun episode that we do the entire month because and it's not a huge group, so we get to know these people and we're able to give them more focused answers. And the fact that the answers aren't going out to thousands and thousands of subscribers, they're just going out to a handful of patrons. It's a more intimate and it's more fun, because creating on the internet's hard because there's always going to be those jealous people or those angry people who they're having a hard time in their personal life, and for some reason your YouTube channel just got their attention and they just feel the need for you to feel the pain that they feel. And it's navigating that is hard. And having a place where it is free from that, or 99% free from that, is really nice. And I can't think of a better way to create a troll-free zone than to create a paid access only, right? And Patreon really does lock people who aren't patrons out, right? You can look and kind of observe, but there's no commenting, there's no back and forth.
Yeah. The one of the other things, this is a side topic, but that we've seen across our creator base is that a lot of creators are excited about joining Patreon because they're joining a community of other creators, and they may face challenges like that where on the wild west of the internet, there's a very wide swath of individuals who engage with you, and it can be super positive, it can be super negative, but it's tough to be an internet creator today. And so a lot of our creators are super excited when we are doing these like meetups and stuff like that, where they can engage with their other creators and talk about those challenges. And that we've seen that at our community meetups, it's far less about talking about Patreon. It's far more about talking about, hey, here's the challenges I face as a creator in general on the internet.
Because it's hard to get that sense of community from normal people, right? Because people are like, what are you talking about? You have so much attention. How are these negative comments? It's just hard to understand what it's like. So final question, other than listening to the Creative Funding Show, how do people connect with that community of creators and that Patreon community of creators?
Yeah. Creative funding shows, number one. So there's a few ways. One, we have a online capability to learn more about how to be successful on Patreon. Right now that's housed at learn.patreon.com, but likely moving in the near future. So if you go to patreon.com, there's going to be a whole section of educational materials. Two, once you sign up to Patreon, there's also the opportunity to enter into our community. And there's a community forum where people can share their challenges and talk about one, how to be a better creator on Patreon, but more importantly, how to just drive internet creativity. And then three, we've been doing this thing since the beginning of this year where we're doing quote unquote Patreon on tour, where we're going to a bunch of different markets and talking about how to be successful on Patreon, but more importantly, just bringing the community together. And typically we tweet that out. So if we're coming to a market near you or a city near you, stay tuned to Patreon's Twitter. And usually it's myself and a few other folks from our team that are coming in and sort of facilitating a discussion. And then there's, folks like yourself who hosted a Patreon meetup last night. And we are also super open if you are a Patreon creator and you want to talk about, hosting these meetups in your city and we're not there, we'd love to talk to you. So write into our support teams and then they'll funnel it up to the right people.
Very cool. And we will have a link to that community forum and the Twitter account, if you haven't found it already, in the show notes. So just scroll down in your app and you can find those links. Bremner, thank you so much for coming on the Creative Show today.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And don't forget, the Creative Funding Show is an affiliate of Patreon. So if you want to help the show out while also helping yourself out, sign up for Patreon at creativefunding.show/Patreon affiliate link. This link will put some money into your creator account, and it also helps out the Creative Funding Show. Thank you so much for listening.